Welcome to Track A. In this summer's work with the 5 regional dialogues and the stakeholder survey, sourcing and serving more local food in Maine institutions turned up as one of the top priorities for increasing getting good, healthy food into Mainers. And that really is the goal, is how do we get more healthy, nutritious food on our plates, into our bellies of all Mainers, schools, institutions, into markets and into stores. And it's a process that's complex. It involves all kinds of different dynamics and people. It is where we're starting with Track A. We hope today to begin to look at the priorities that emerged this summer, and in the course of the next 3 weeks, develop strategies and organize for action to both deepen our understanding of the dynamics of the current food system and to look at how we can move that from a less extractive and more regenerative system overall. Most importantly, we'll be making new connections, learning more what is going on, what needs to be done, and developing relationships and linkages that will not end with this project, but only be the beginning of ongoing collaborative relationships, so that we can truly make some changes in the way that our great Maine food gets into onto the plates and into the bellies of all Mainers. I'm going to turn over to Lauren Caskey, who's going to introduce those of us who have been working on this.
Thank you, David. And as someone who works regionally, something that's really been a standout for me in Maine is this strength of the network and the networks of networks. And I saw it through some of the initial food shortage issues with COVID. The hospitals I worked with who already had networks with their local food producers avoided some of the food access issues that other hospitals throughout the region were experiencing, and it just builds more and more resilience for the food system. So it's something I really appreciate, and I appreciate that this convergence is further deepening those networks. So the Track A team will wave to you as I say their name, and they've all been working hard on the next couple of weeks for you. Steph Cesario de Biasi, Jonah Fertigberg from Sewell Foundation. Sorry, Steph is from Maine Farm to School Network and Maine Farm to Institution. Shelly Go-Ray from Maine General and Maine Farm to Institution. Mary Hudson from Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. I'm from Healthcare Without Harm and Maine Farm to Institution. Suzanne Lee from University of Maine Mitchell Center.
Sorry, I'm via phone, but I'll join shortly.
Welcome, Suzanne. Nicholas Lindholm from MAFCA. Renee Page from the Healthy Communities of the Capital Area and Maine Farm to Institution. David Whittlesey from Maine Network of Community Food Councils. And then Jeff Wolowitz from Heiwa Tofu, and Maine Farm to Institution. And with that, I'll send it back to Annie.
Thanks, Lauren, and all of you working on Track A. Briefly, your main facilitators today are Steph, you'll see there. She's running tech support. It's a really busy job. Please chat her with any questions that you have related to tech. Myself and Tanya Swain from Maine Food Strategy will also be piping in here. And please feel free to also chat any of us directly with questions. So briefly, we're going to review the Convergence overall framework briefly before we jump on more into track A stuff. So our overall mission is to develop deeper relationships and greater trust as we co-create an equitable and thriving food system for Maine. And our vision, very related, is a food system that fosters the well-being of people, planet, and communities. And so how do we get there? We get there through acting, living out our values, which are equity and collective power, systems thinking, and networking differently. We went into all of these values, especially really pronouncing the equity one yesterday in our opening event, which will be available on our website and Facebook, and we'll probably mail it to you. So if you were not there yesterday, please go back and really dig into that. You can dig into that framework a lot more. So the goals of the Convergence are to develop and strengthen trusting relationship throughout our food system, and to catalyze collective action. So, you know, we all know that when we get things done a lot better when we know people. So deepening those relationships are really, really important. It's also easier to get things, really create ongoing communication coordination system that will help us work better together to have that. We not only is a commitment to collective action, but like building systems of transparency so we can move forward through this work across sectors, across the state. With that, I'm going to pass on to Steph to ground us a little bit in our work.
Hey everyone. Spotlight. We farm, garden, fish, and work on the unceded territory of the Wabanaki Confederacy. Wabanaki peoples have stewarded the beautiful land we now farm and fish on, called Maine, for thousands of years and continue to today. The Maine Food Convergence Project stands in solidarity with Wabanaki land, food, water, and cultural sovereignty. We reckon with the past and ongoing harm of violence of colonization. Acknowledging the land is one small step in a long journey of truth-telling, atonement, and repair that can guide us towards a regenerative and equitable food system here. So let's just take the deepest breath we've taken all day to take a little moment of silence to honor the Wabanaki Confederacy. I'm going to put into the chat a resource guide on racial equity in the food system that we also put into your participant packet. If you want to learn more about why we're doing a land acknowledgement and why centering Wabanaki leadership is so important in food systems work. And again, I really encourage you to listen in on the session last night. We'll be sending out the recording today where we had a lot more framing around racial equity and justice. I'm gonna transition to talking a bit about our track specifically. So we have a kickoff example to get us going on a collaborative project to scale up food processing in Maine. So before we jump into our work, Matt Chin, who's the Vice President of Supply Chain for Good Shepherd Food Bank, can give us a great overview on a project that Good Shepherd has been stewarding. Matt is responsible for growing the capacity of the supply chain so that Good Shepherd can meet their bold goal of by 2025, ensuring that all food insecure Mainers have access to the food they need when and where they need it. So the supply chain organization includes distribution centers in Auburn and Hamden, a fleet of tractor trailers, sourcing, inventory management, facilities, and safety. So this is a really exciting project. If you haven't heard of Harvesting for Good, you're about to hear a little more. And it's a great example of the type of projects and collaborations that we support through the Convergence. So I'll let Matt introduce himself a little bit more, and I'll stop talking. But thanks so much, Matt, for joining us and kind of kicking us off with what you've all got going on in your supply chain. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Steph, and good morning, everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to share the work that we've been looking at essentially for the last 7 years. So you might be asking yourself why Good Shepherd Food Bank is interested in food processing. Well, it turns out that it supports our bold goal that states all food insecure Mainers will have access to the healthy food they need to thrive by 2025. Let me share some current statistics with you. We forecast that there are about 215,000 Mainers that are food insecure. That represents about 16% of the population. Of the 215,000 food insecure Mainers, about 60,000 are children. These numbers represent a post-COVID environment that we are in. We estimate that COVID has increased the food insecurity issues in Maine by about 25%. The current thinking also states that the impact of COVID will last probably throughout the decade, well beyond 2025. This food insecurity, if you were to look at it quantitatively, is about 40 million meals that Mainers cannot provide for themselves, either due to income, poverty, and many other issues that will most likely be covered in this session. Excuse me. Today, Good Shepherd is providing about 32 million meals. So there's an 8 million meal gap, or about 10 million pounds. That's a significant hole that we need to cover in the next 4 years. So how do we fill that gap? We think the answer is in our own backyard with local, Maine grown fresh produce. The current system that most of you know quite well is that there is abundance of high quality produce. In many cases during the growing season, the supply far outstrips demand, where farms overproduce due to the risk of farming, resulting in a lot of product being left in the field at the end of the harvest. All of the farmers are really restricted to only selling to the fresh market. There is significant food available from the months of May to November, but very little outside of the growing season. So our solution is to purchase many, many pounds of local fresh produce, freeze it, and distribute it to our food insecure network throughout the year. This clearly supports local farms. It opens new markets to them, essentially doubling their demand. And this will help support the 10 million pound gap that we need to fill to eliminate the meal gap. When we first started thinking about this, 7 years ago, we were hoping to find a local food processor in Maine and contract to work with them. At that time, we talked to Coastal Farms in Belfast, who unfortunately closed in 2014, and then Northern Girl in Van Buren, who closed in 2017, leaving essentially no food processor in the state. What we learned through those conversations was that this business needed scale. On day one, we needed to be at a significant volume so that we can have lower cost and have a sustainable financial business model. Also, this business needed specific operational expertise in running a processing facility, distribution, and logistics. This business also needed sufficient startup cash to meet the capital-intensive equipment needs and the working capital of this business, which I'll explain a little bit later. So unfortunately, no local processor was in Maine, and we looked throughout New England. We talked with the Food Venture Center in Hardwick, Vermont, and the Western Massachusetts Food Processing Center in Greenfield, Mass. And both of them, unfortunately, was too small for us to achieve the scale that we need to form this business. So we were a group with an idea, and we were in need of a processor. Lucky for us, back in October of 2018, Kristen Malley, the president of Good Shepherd, met with Tony Sherman, the president of Wyman's of Maine, at a Maine food economy panel. And during that evening, we were told that Wyman's has the largest IQF tunnel in probably New England. IQF stands for individually quick freeze. They can process up to 10,000 pounds of wild blueberries in an hour. This clearly is what is necessary to build a high volume processing company. This partnership yields some significant benefits to Wyman's. At that time, they were under a lot of market pressure from cultivated blueberries, which degraded both their price and their market share. All of their assets are highly underutilized throughout the year, really only being used for the 6 weeks that they freeze blueberries during the blueberry harvest. They have, most of their employees are seasonal, so hopefully by processing some produce, they can extend the employments of their seasonal employees. And this work in supporting the hunger movement is very consistent with their corporate values. The benefits to Good Shepherd is lower capital investment, built-in expertise on food processing, food safety, and Wyman's is already an existing supplier to both Hannaford and Sodexo. So now we found our processor. We now have to determine what are we going to grow, what we're going to freeze, and who do we sell it to. We need to sell some products so that we can cover our cost and also achieve the scale that we need that could not be achieved with just selling this food to our food pantry network. So we look at the market in Maine for frozen fruit. The research says that Maine consumes about 10 million pounds of frozen produce. Unfortunately, that's too small for us to really get the scale that we need. So we are looking to sell our product throughout the New England area. New England's demand for frozen food is about 10 times bigger than Maine and slightly over 115 million pounds. So based on this data, that we have decided that broccoli florets will be our initial product. It has the largest demand, close to 30 million pounds in New England, and we can grow about 50 million pounds in the state. And we have targeted two channels, the institutional channel, which many of those customers are committed or potentially required to have a percentage of their food sourced locally. And many of the consumers, like students and patients that go to hospitals, are also food insecure. Retail is our second market, where the retail customers are very mindful of their purchases. They tend to buy local when they can. They support food systems with a smaller carbon footprint, and they might be able to, or might be willing to spend a little bit more money in support of feeding hungry people. So let's fast forward to today. Good Shepherd Food Bank has organized a wholly owned for-profit subsidiary called Harvesting Good. Harvesting Good will purchase the broccoli have it processed, and will sell it to the end customers. The mission of Harvesting Good is to improve access to nutritious food for people in need and strengthen regional food systems by creating food processing infrastructure for farmers in New England. Let me give you a sense of who our current partners are. We have partnered with Circle B Farms in Caribou, who will grow, harvest, hydrocool, and hydrocool broccoli crowns. W.R. Allen in Olin, Maine, will floret, blanch, and freeze the broccoli. Wyman's business has a significant uptick due to COVID, and they have introduced us to W.R. Allen, who is a smaller blueberry processor. And we thank Wyman's for that recommendation. Wyman's is still part of the supply chain. They're located in Cherryfield, Maine, and will package and transport to our end customers. Hannaford, our anchor retail customer, has agreed to sell Harvesting Good product as an independent brand and then convert it to their private brand where we would realize much higher volume. They will also help promote our products to all of the other Ahold Delhaize brands. Sodexo, our anchor institutional customer, has agreed to sell Harvesting Good to their higher education accounts in New England, and in the following year to all of their institutional accounts in New England. They will also encourage Cisco to promote Harvesting Good products to their customers outside of the Sodexo customer footprint. We have established a Harvesting Good board, have legal counsel, and have begun the retail branding team. The legal counsel will help us write and construct a 3 to 5 year contract for all of our partners. So we will have forward contracting with our farmers, at least at a minimum. Funding seems to be in good shape. We have currently raised $2.5 million, and we have several other very large asks out, and we are confident that that funding will come in. Financially, this business is pretty tough. And I think that's the reason why there aren't many mid-scale processors in the state. There is very large startup capital requirements. We have to pay for a hydrocooler, floret cutter, blancher, and all of the supporting infrastructure. And then there's a large working capital need where the expenses of the capital and the processing will predate any revenue associated with that product. So we'll need several $1 million of working capital. And we anticipate to spend some money and outsource the retail brand development. The market competition is very stiff, where most of the frozen food that you see in the retail channels come from Mexico or China, where a typical Mexican farm worker makes about $7 a day. So that's equivalent to, if I could do the math in my head, 25 minutes of what we would want to pay a worker here in the state. So what's our plan going into the future? We will be selling food to the institutional market, retail, and the Good Shepherd Food Bank partner network. In 2022, which is our first year of production, we hope to sell 1 million pounds of florets. In 2023, we hope to double that to 2 million pounds. 2024, we hope with the help of Hannaford and selling to the other Ahold Delhaize brands to increase that to 5 million. In 2025, we will introduce our second product. Our long-term goal is to have a year-round processing facility, freezing multiple produce varieties with annual revenues over $15 million with the following outcomes. First, create new and significant sales channels for local growers who are currently constrained to selling to the fresh market. 2, build out a processing infrastructure for small and medium farms in the Northeast. Grow and strengthen farm businesses, adding to economic activity and job growth in the agricultural sector and rural communities. Strengthen Maine's reputation as a quality food producing state and contributing to the success of other Maine-based food businesses. And lastly, create year-round quality jobs in Aroostook, Hancock, and Washington counties, 3 of New England's poorest counties. We hope and believe that Harvesting Good can increase the amount of healthy local food in our schools, institutions, and retailers, which is imperative to the health of Maine's communities and economy. I thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. You go.
Thank you. We all thank you, Matt. It's so inspiring and really descriptive of the work we're trying to do here, building those relationships. So thank you so much for this introduction. We're running a little behind, so if you have questions for Matt or any of us, please put them in the chat and we will put Matt's email in the chat also. There it is. Thanks, Steph. And we will have time coming up to share with each other a little more in a minute. So real briefly, before we keep going here, I want to outline the format of these sessions. So today we're identifying priorities. You're going to, in your breakout groups, have discussion about these priorities that your track team has identified. And then later on, you're going to vote on which ones seem most important to have collective action on. Next week is session 2, where we'll be developing these priorities into strategies. And so really brainstorming together what it can look like, the activities, the outcomes, all these things. And then in session 3, we're going to look at these strategies and brainstorm again together collectively what is needed to move them forward. So what kind of infrastructure and funding and policy and research is needed to, and the who, of course, is a big piece, to move these strategies forward. And then real briefly, before we get into our, before we continue with this storytelling, you can move the slide forward, thank you. We want to hit you again with our convergence agreements, because this is a real big deal in the process of developing equitable spaces. I'm just going to highlight 3 agreements for today. And again, they're also in your participant packets. So we are present. So really just check in with yourself to, because we know that like we really have to focus and it's a lot of brain work, but every once in a while, if you can just stop and pause and check in with your body. And I want to do that right now to ground ourselves. So if you all could just take a second to maybe close your eyes and put your feet on the ground and just try to feel, go from like your head, take a deep breath down, feel your shoulders and your neck, and try to like get some of that tension out that you may not even know that you had. Go down through your arms into your fingers and down your back, your whole body, through your legs into your feet. And just check in with yourself for a second. Get a little more present. So if you can do that once in a while throughout all your days, really, get out of your head into your body. That's going to help. It's going to help us all. We are transparent, brave, empathetic communicators. So we're going to be working collectively, right? And we just need to remember to put ourselves aside and to be able to hear others, and to also just, again, connect to your own body to communicate what is inside. We want to embrace conflict about ideas, but not about people, right? So that's a big thing, to have discussion about ideas. We are better together. This is a big one. We create authentic relationships. We value all contributions to collective work, both measurable and immeasurable. So we share the same goal, right? So really stay focused on this goal and know that the biggest piece of all of this is creating relationships. It's not what's right, what's wrong. It's about the relationships. So stay focused on that. So with that being said, we know that there can be challenges that arise when we get a whole bunch of different people in the room together of different backgrounds and races and cultures and from different areas. So things can arise, challenges can arise, and feelings can arise. And we want to focus on the ideas and not our own feelings in these breakout groups throughout the weeks. And so if you need space to process the ideas, your feelings, because they're so valid, then we have folks to talk to. Both white and BIPOC folks are available to support you. So Steph just put the email address in your in the chat. And so if anything comes up that you want to talk through, please send an email and we'll set up a support person to talk with you. So before we go on, I just want to ground us one more time, especially before we hear stories from real experiences. In this quote from Adrienne Marie Brown, who wrote Emergent Strategy, "There's an art to flocking, staying separate enough not to crowd each other, aligned enough to maintain a shared direction, and cohesive enough to always move toward each other." So if you are one of those people who want to give that 1 minute or less pitch, please put your name in the chat and I will call on you. I'll give folks a couple minutes to write in the chat. And if there's, hopefully there'll be some people, and if not, we'll just open it up. Oh, great. Yay, they're rolling in. Okay. So Tom, I'm going to try to time folks too, because we only have about 8 minutes for all of this, or maybe 10. Steph,
maybe we should stop screen share just so that we can see everyone, or?
Yes, please. It's coming. In the meantime, boy, I'm big.
And then you can go to the top right, view, and click gallery view if you really want to see everyone. But if it's overwhelming, you don't have to.
All right, Tom, will you give your 1 minute pitch? And I'm going to give you a time warning when you have like 10 seconds left, okay?
All right, I'm going to give a 30-second pitch because I'm going to have Yannick coming in right behind me. So one of our priorities that we really want to focus on is making sure that there's no food waste on the farm level, getting those calories out of the field, getting that product processed, maybe put into a regional cold storage facility, something that can be shared amongst growers and producers, making sure that those calories turn into a processed product that get into people's mouths.
Yannick, nice.
Yes. Promoting what's around us, promoting local food. There is a lot of people out there who are not aware of the opportunities that are out there to get local food, just like I was many years ago. Now that I'm aware, I feel like there's a lot of people who could benefit from it. It's always good to get the word out and get people to know what's around them. And hopefully it will change the mentalities of the decision makers in retail or other institutions that we're hoping to work more with. Thanks.
Nice. Less than 30 seconds. Shelly and Lori, go.
Okay. So our group focused on the priority of processing and distribution, making sure that we understood up front that they're very different lines of business. And so they are their own separate animals, but they do intertwine and have to intertwine quite smoothly to be successful. So that's kind of the areas that we were looking at to how do we incorporate it on that map and make it successful. But Lori, do you want to talk about your two things?
Sure, thank you, Shelly. We brought up that training and technical assistance could be helpful on both sides, on both the processing and, or on both the producing side and the purchasing side, and in the processing side as well. It could almost form a bridge between all of the sides, and it could help to address the inequalities in the food system by bringing everyone up to the same level of knowledge. And then we noticed that policy was missing from the system map, and policy could help to incentivize purchasers to seek more local. products. Thank you.
Beautiful, thanks. Lauren, you're up. And also, just to be clear, if you have the same priority or issue area that you want to discuss, there can be repeats. So go for it.
Well, that's good because I do.
Go for it.
We also discussed local food processing as something that's got a lot of momentum here in Maine, and it is really useful for a lot of institutions specifically. It also is connected to policy and legislation to support purchasing, producing, and processors, and potentially even some ideas around shared insurance or shared risk that could develop out. Help some of the producers who are historically marginalized get to the level where they can really be selling at scale and have a healthy, thriving business.
Thank you. Davis?
Sure. Our group had some pretty general discussions about how policy had the most potential to have broad-based impacts collectively. And that in order to measure the impacts associated with that policy, we need good data in terms of tracking institutional purchases and purchases across the procurement spectrum. So 2 priorities that came out of our group.
Thank you. Melissa, did you go already? Melissa?
Hi.
There you go.
Our group talked a lot about education and just, the importance of starting educating about local food and about, sourcing local food, growing local food at a very young age through kids. We also talked about, educating consumers on organic versus local and, why local is, should be the most important more than, organic, because a lot of the farmers can't necessarily afford to, become organic certified. But I think the big thing is just the education piece of, and not just on children, but on families and being able to have them utilize local product and how to produce it or process it and how to cook it. And that was a lot of what we talked about. So.
Thanks, Melissa. Jimmy?
Echoing some of the things we heard about local incentives as well, and potentially disincentives for foods that are destructive to the planet or just undermining Maine building a local resilient food system. So taxes or other mechanisms to disincentivize the bads.
Thank you, Jimmy. Alex, you're up.
We spent a lot of time talking about the priority around buyer producer seafood networking and support, and really just increasing information flows between buyers and producers or vendors and buyers to better have more consistent product, to better understand demand, which would then streamline sort of like demand priorities, which would improve logistics, which would increase margins. And then really leveraging federal meal programs to do that and enhance demand through schools. And then also incentivize with increasing the state reimbursement for local food in schools.
Nice, thanks, Alex. Peter, you're up. Hi, Peter. Wherever you are.
Sorry, had to unmute. So we talked a lot about the same things other folks did. With people were excited by the harvesting good model, but wanted to make sure that local small farms might benefit, not just the big farms. To that, we talked a bunch about incentives and mentioned a couple of different ways to go about that, and mentioned that the policy level needs to be engaged there to perhaps put in a requirement for certain percentages of food, institutional food being purchased locally. And that also could be connected with the gleaning kinds of approaches. We also mentioned training and technical assistance for, particularly for institutions, to make sure that they have the skills needed to take advantage of local foods. We got into a discussion of access to land and to fisheries, noting that that wasn't a priority here, but that's a barrier to entry into the market and has an equity dimension to it as well. And then we also discussed the networking support between buyers and producers, and noted that the database issue probably is connected with that, not necessarily a separate kind of initiative.
Okay, thanks, Peter. And we're gonna have one more. Dave is going to share, and
I had one other, Annie.
Okay, real brief, wrap it up.
Somebody in our group was aware of studies about the forward contracting and noted that the producers are excited about it, but there's no interest among buyers. So we have to solve that puzzle.
Nice, thank you. All right, so Dave, why don't you share? And in the meantime, folks can open up the link that was just put in your chat and follow that form to weigh in on the priorities that you see need the most collective impact, or would be most impactful if they were worked on collectively. So Dave, you've got 1 minute, and then everybody will focus.
30 seconds only needed. Incentives, training, and technical support to incentivize even those that may need that help, for helping to market those types of local products, specifically geared towards BIPAC, women-owned, farmer, veteran groups. Policy to support nutrient cycling. Currently today, I think that seems to be a good avenue to be looking at, as we discussed. And last bullet point that I had was we were discussing a lot of the interrelationships between networking and making sure that those scalability and size of organizations are met with the appropriate help within the state that's needed. Larger ones obviously might need a larger focus area. So
thanks, Dave. All right, thanks everybody for jumping into those discussions. Please take the time to fill out that form, and we'll give you some music or something for the next few minutes while you do that, and then we'll come right back here. So don't leave, just stay right there and do the form, and then we'll close.
Daughter of soil, daughter of sand, child sprung forth from the flesh of the land. Wind won't break you, you just bend like the trees that sway high over your head. Son of ocean, son of sea, you breathe underwater so comfortably. Waves won't break you, just roll you aside. The trough as your cradle, rocks as you ride. Terra firma is the wish of the sea. To stand for one moment in such pure constancy. A constant movement is the wish of the land. To be undulating with weather and wind at her hand. But they'll never be more than land and sea. shape each other without understanding the forces that alter their arms. How the wind and warmth that rolls from the hills makes the waves that shape the shore. Daughter of gravel, daughter of clay.
Okay, sorry to cut you off, Amelia. Just to put a plug in, that's Amelia Dahlen, who's from the Norway area. She's got some beautiful music. All right, thank you for taking the time to do that form right now. It really is going to inform what moves forward here. Brief, we've already put the Slack chat into the Slack info into the chat, but Steph's going to put it in there again. So your conversations from today do not have to end when our meeting ends in a few minutes. You can sign up. We already have like 49 folks from the team in there. So you can find a lot of people on the Slack channel and also on that Kumu map. So check those out. And then it is time to close up here. Steph is also going to put a link to another form, which is our closing form to get feedback on how today went. And we're really going to be looking at this information and adjusting how the next couple of sessions go. So please take the time within the next 48 hours to fill out this short-ish survey. After the 48 hours, we're going to process the information so that we can have it to move forward with. So again, you have 48 hours to complete that. Thank you so much. Let's see. And that
just a quick plug on the feedback form. It's really, really important for us because it's a chance for you to say, who's not here today? What is missing? What was your experience? So it's actually a really important part of our equity, inclusion, and justice goals to have feedback from you on what your experience was and other thoughts that you have as we're all learning together. So big plug on the feedback. It's really helpful.
Yes, and just to add to that, also there's like any thoughts that we had to bike rack, parking lot, save for another time that you feel is really important to move forward in the conversations, there's space for that too. So we want to make sure that we capture everything that we can. I just want to ask the facilitators from the breakout rooms if you can stay on for a few minutes to have a quick debrief. That would be really great in doing the best we can moving forward. So please stay on if you can. And I'm going to pass off the closing to Jonah.
Great. Well, thank you all again so much for being here today and for joining us in this process, and looking forward to our conversations over the next few weeks as we really develop strategies and organize action together. And yeah, just throughout the conversations today, just really resonating with some of what we came into these conversations, how we're better together, how our relationships are really a fundamental part of feeding this food system and feeding our communities. And together we can co-create actions. And I know in our breakout group, we had some really rich conversation that was not perfect, but was generative, was growing, and nurturing and creative. And, you know, I just really want us to continue to hold those values as we move forward in this process in the Maine Food Convergence. And I'm really, really excited to be on this journey with all of you here, and excited to connect with folks that I've connected with in the past, excited to connect with folks that I'm just meeting today in this Zoom space, and we'll be journeying together as we really work towards building a resilient and equitable and just food system. And I want to close us with a quote from Adrienne Marie Brown from the book Emergent Strategy. And I want to also encourage folks to check out that book as well. I've been on my reading list for quite a while, and I just picked it up this winter, and it was great actually in a planning call for the food convergence that several of us were reading at the same time. So there's a real emergence there of networks and co-creating our thinking together. And so definitely encourage folks to pick up this book as well and read it. So without further ado, I'll read the quote. Oak trees don't set an intention to listen to each other better or agree to hold tight to each other when the next storm comes. Under the earth, always, they reach for each other. They grow such that their roots are intertwined and create a system of strength that is as resilient on a sunny day as it is in a hurricane. Just want folks to breathe in that quote, see what it means for you, and we'll wrap up. So thank you all again. We're wrapping up 2 minutes before 1 o'clock.
Woohoo!
It's great. You have 1 more minute to go and enjoy the rest of your day, hopefully.
And see you next Tuesday at
Yes.
10 a.m. and invite others to join also in between now and then. So that's a big ask for you for the next 2 weeks, is inviting others to join. I created a little room for the breakout facilitators to debrief if you have time. If you don't, that's okay. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.